I'm using gCADPlus here in the Mac environment, and I'm busy developing a template for one of our users. If I roll out a little, and this is a test design, there's the house footprint as a magenta line given a thickness. This represents the design area, and we're going to use these symbols. So we want to start with an environment like this, and the reason for that is that each of these symbols is tagged to an entry in the accompanying plant database file. Let's pick this symbol here. If I move over into the properties box, I've chosen the symbol from the standard set in gCADPlus, plant symbol number 95, but I've tagged it or associated it with a species of Dianella. It's a cultivated species, so it's called Little Jess, and I've put quotes around there. Let's see if we can find that in the plant database. To look at the database, we go gCADPlus and edit the plant list. So we're looking for a Dianella, a native flax, and here it is. See the little quotes after it. Now, we want those quotes to be in the plant schedule that gets generated. I'll just take a moment to widen this plant database here. You can see that the user who developed this has put a lot of extra information, colour and flowering time, height and width, and put quite a big description in this particular column here. So we can print this at some further stage, so it'll be able to be edited by scrolling through it. But I digress. What we had a problem with was the single quotes when we generated a plant schedule from this. What I'm going to do is just take and retype those, and then I'll say OK. Now if we come in here and find the Dianella, here it is here. See that funny symbol that appears before, so the text has not been done the way it should, hadn't picked up. What I've done is now edited it, and we'll go into gCADPlus and we'll just update that schedule. And I hope you can see now that the quote now reverts. Slightly unusual, I would prefer single quotes the same as at the end and the beginning, but that's by the by. So that's the plant schedule that's been generated from all of these symbols, which we would hope would get used in the design there. Let's have a look at the layout sheet where this information's being displayed. I've got an A3 sheet here in portrait view, so you see at the top of the screen all those symbols, and here is the plant schedule. And if we zoom in on it, can you see if we come down here and we see for Scabiola, we see those funny symbols again. So now we know the fix. We can just dive in there and overtype them. So there's a word of warning: if you bring a plant database file from Windows into the Mac environment, you might just run into that particular trouble. Now, as part of making a template, of course, one of the first things you would try is let's print it and see what we get. The quick check is File and Save as a PDF. I'll choose the window option and I'll go for maximum resolution, and I'll start down here just outside and move up to there, and we'll say test. We'll put it on our Mac desktop and overwrite the one that's there. And here's the result. Now this is being generated by the Mac PDF viewer. I'll zoom out a little. It's not a bad result, but the text is a little blurry. It's a PDF file. you get a better result, and this is one of the reasons for making this little movie. If you go to use Finder and go to the desktop and find that test file and right click and say I'm going to open it with Adobe Acrobat Reader, and here we are again, same output, and that looks a lot better. That's quite acceptable, I would think. Can print nicely on an A3 sheet. We're getting some good detail here. The next thing that I would try is to print with a proper PDF writer, a high resolution one. So I'd go File and Print, and I've chosen a PDF writer now. It's a phantom printer. It's going at 300 dots per inch, so I'll change that. I set up my page correctly. A3 in portrait view is correct. Go to properties, set up, say we'll go 1200 dots per inch, apply that, and we'll OK that, and OK again. So we're going to fit it to the paper, but notice the scale there, 1 to 1,006, so it's almost 1 to 1. So we're printing a piece of paper 1 to 1. If we wanted to print to an exact scale, you'd have to select the floating viewport and set a fixed scale. At the moment it's 66. That's convenient for what we're doing at the moment, but you might want to set a fixed scale of 1 to 50 or 1 to 100. So let's print it. File, print. We've got it all set, 1200 by 1200. We're just printing the paper, and we'll go OK. Takes a little time. We need to look down here in the command area, and things I think was quicker than I imagined, and it's finished. So now we need to look at that PDF file. It can be a bit tricky on a Mac with the PDF writer, because the job goes into an unusual space, and I'm hopeful that this one is the one we're after. So I'm going to select it and open it with Acrobat Reader, and we can scroll in that way down here, right click, marquee, zoom. I hope you would agree we've got quite good resolution. Still haven't fixed up that particular problem, and I think it's Command 0 will give you full size. And let's go marquee, zoom again, and draw a little box. So the symbols will come across and they've printed very nicely. We could pump the resolution to 2400 if we wanted. So I'm fairly happy now that this particular template is by no means completed, but you could now start. This particular group should be able to start with this environment and produce drawings relatively quickly, conveniently, and print the finished design. All my users have asked for an example of printing at very high resolution and getting some finer line work. So we have two things to fix. The first is we'd go to Format and Line Weights. The default here is currently set at 0.15. That could be, you could argue it's a little bit too thick. The default usually 0.25. Let's come down to 0.05. What I'm after is for very fine lines so that we can zoom in on symbols and everything looks quite crisp. So we'll say we'll apply that and we'll say OK, and we'll go back to File and Print, and we'll change from 1200 dots per inch to the maximum of 2400, and we'll apply that and say OK and OK. OK. So we should now, if we go to Finder again, And if you look up here, we have generated a new file. Let's select it and right click and open it with Acrobat Reader. So we're looking for, let's use that marquee again. We want to see some fairly fine line work, and I'm relatively happy with that. My text is nice and crisp, so that's going to print really, really well. I think it's, again, Command 0 will give us the full screen. If we come in and try a marquee zoom again, the logo that we've been developing also shows nicely. So it's quite easy on a Mac or on a Windows machine to play with line weights, line thickness and various printers. On Windows machines you've got a wide range of PDF writers, including the one we use, which is called gCADPlus. So I hope that helps when you're dealing with developing a template. There's a long way to go, but that's the beginning of the process.